A referendum on a new constitution for Syria. President Assad promises political openness. Opposition groups say it's just window dressing. Even as the vote took place, rockets continued to rain down on Homs. So is this real change or is it a sham? This is Inside Story. Hello there, welcome to the programme. I'm Shuli Ghosh. The Syrian government has announced overwhelming approval for its new constitution after a referendum held on Sunday. But the vote was boycotted by opposition groups and dismissed as a farce by international politicians. President Assad unveiled the proposed new charter earlier this month. In theory, it ends the Ba'ath Party's grip on power and paves the way for political change. President Assad promised elections in 90 days if the new constitution was adopted, and state television has announced that 89% of voters voted yes. But with many parts of the country still reeling from military assault, activists are calling the vote meaningless. The draft constitution includes 14 new and 47 amended articles. One of the main changes would be the end of more than 50 years of single-party rule. The introduction of a multi-party system would mean the Ba'ath Party no longer has a monopoly of power. The draft also restricts the president to just 2 7-year terms in office. But this isn't retroactive, meaning Assad could still be in power long after the next presidential election in 2014. The new constitution also says the president still has to be Muslim, his wife has to be Syrian, and he must have lived in Syria for 10 years. Well, that rules out minority Christians and many of President Bashar al-Assad's opponents who've been in exile for years. And, as before, the new charter says the president chooses the prime minister. The opposition says the party with the most votes should have that power. Well, while casting his vote at the state broadcasting headquarters, President Bashar al-Assad showed no signs of ending the crackdown on protesters, but he tried to deflect blame in other directions.
The attack launched against us is a media attack. That's why media is important. But eventually, media doesn't surpass reality. So maybe they are stronger than us in space, but we are stronger on the ground. But in spite of that, we want to win the media battle in space and on the ground, and I leave that to you.
So, a lot of issues there to discuss. Let's introduce today's guests. From Dubai, Fadi Salem, a blogger on social media and open government in the Arab world. Also in Dubai, Yaser Tabbara, a trained lawyer and member of the Syrian National Council. And on the line from Damascus, George Jabbour, a former independent expert with the UN Human Rights Council. Welcome to the programme. Fadi, let's start with you. 89% approval, according to state television, of the new constitution. Are you surprised by that?
Not at all. Everybody expected a result like this, especially after the calls for boycott by most, if not all, the opposition groups inside and outside the country, because they saw that this is just a cosmetic step that is not really based on real will of the people, especially the flawed process that had happened in terms of designing the new constitution, the voting process, as well as implementing it in terms of what it includes for first the elections, second excluding the minorities, excluding many of the people who are outside, the Syrians outside. So there were lots of criticisms, and the boycott was called for, and effectively whoever went to the vote are either the people who were told by the state media that it is a good thing, or few of the people who didn't boycott and voted no.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the boycott there by opposition groups. It's also the case that the violence was continuing in many parts of Syria, so it must have been very difficult for anyone to vote in certain areas, even if they'd wanted to.
Absolutely. It's effectively what we saw in the last in this referendum is that the Syrian people were giving 10 days. A big percentage of the population was either under severe electricity cuts or having security issues with bombardments, as well as violence taking place in cities like Homs and Idlib and others. And in only 10 days, only the state media was able to discuss this for the people, and half of the population probably had electricity cuts again. So no real discussions, as well not even those who were able to see or decide on the vote, many of them weren't able to go and vote effectively.
You say that this is a cosmetic exercise, but there is an important inclusion in there for a multi-party system. It talks about political pluralism. Surely that's a step forward.
Well, the text itself is, of course, an upgrade. It's much better than the older text of the Constitution. The fact that it excluded many in the design and in the way that it was discussed in public is another thing. It's unfair to many. For example, it has contradiction. It wasn't discussed deeply enough. It excludes many in the society in terms of ability to run for a president, for example. It gives a lot of power to the president. And effectively, it's not an issue of the text itself. The fact that the Syrian government, the Syrian regime, even during the past constitution, was thinking that it is above the law and above the constitution itself. So we might have a better text, but in reality, the actual actions on the ground gives you the impression that this is meaningless.
Let's go to George Jabbour on the line from Damascus. George, as a former presidential advisor and a former lawmaker in the Syrian government, what do you think about this constitution? Because there's been a lot of criticism over it.
Well, in 1975, I delivered a series of lectures on the constitutions in the Arab Higher Institute in Cairo, that is part of the League of Arab States. I said that constitutions in many developing countries are personal in the sense that they fit the person who makes them. I say also that the constitutions in some developed countries are also personal. Let's say the constitution of France in 1959 of de Gaulle was fitting for General de Gaulle himself only. So I think that when we discuss constitutions, we have to be clear on what we are discussing. Constitutions are important, but then they are not the whole game. I liked what our colleague said, that this present constitution is much better than the constitution of 1973. I agree. We have finished with Article 8. Article 8 was something remnant from the Russian Soviet constitution, which in its Article 6 said that the Communist Party is the leading party in the society and state. Our Article 8 was modeled after that article. That article in the Russian constitution was, of course, came to an end in 1991. Ours came to an end something like 20 years after. We are rather 20 years late, and this, I said it in a Syrian newspaper article that was published recently.
Article 8 that you refer to there enshrined the dominance of the Ba'ath Party in social life and political life. The fact that that's being repealed now, and they're talking about a multi-party system, is it going to be true political openness? Because, I mean, who's going to have the power to register these parties?
Well, this is again a matter in Syrian history that has a nice little story. I said little, no, it is a very significant story. That was in 1946. The Ba'ath Party was then a very young party, and the authorization of establishing parties or abrogating the licenses of the party was in the hands of the Minister of the Interior. So the Ba'ath Party and the Minister of the Interior at that time was Mr. Sabri al-Asali, the late Sabri al-Asali, and he was against the Ba'ath Party. There was some sort of enmity between the late minister and the Ba'ath Party. So the Ba'ath Party sort of started rioting in the streets against the minister and against legislative decree number 50 of October 1946. Now, the first martyr of the Ba'ath Party was killed by the police in those riots. the main issue that the Ba'ath Party raised is that the Minister of the Interior should not be the authority to determine what is a political party and what is not a political party, and when do you revoke the license of a political party. The Ba'ath Party at that time, a minority party, was able to amend the legislative decree a little bit. Now, in our constitution, in our laws now, in the party laws, we have the Minister of the Interior presiding, but he is not deciding all by himself. He has a judge on his side, or I suppose two judges, and two other persons. So he is not alone. Yet the Ministry of the Interior continues to be dominant in this regard.
Yes, indeed. Yaser, let me bring you in here. As a member of the Syrian National Council, explain to us why opposition groups boycotted this vote, because doesn't that play into the hands of President Assad and his supporters?
Well, frankly, this whole entire debate about the referendum and the constitution and all these nice little stories of history that your guest from Damascus has been giving are all a distraction and smoke and mirrors, basically, for the real context and the real situation. And the context, what we need to define before we engage in this legal exchange about the new constitution versus the old constitution and the referendum, is that this is an legally illegitimate regime that is engaging in illegitimate actions. And that regime has lost its legitimacy months ago, has hammered the last nail of its illegitimacy coffin 23 days ago when it decided to brutally shell cities, Homs, Hama, entire neighborhoods in Homs. We were getting reports that 80%, up to 80% of Baba Amr, the residential area, has been flattened. And as we speak, the shelling continues. And so the international community came together, both in the General Assembly of the United Nations and in Tunis a few days ago, to reaffirm that this regime and this so-called president has lost complete legitimacy to govern over its people. It has failed in its responsibility to protect its own people, and therefore any action that is basically taken forward in terms of a referendum or a talk about political reform is consequentially illegitimate and completely rejected. Now, having set the context, now we can talk about this basically pathetic attempt, this transparent attempt to basically take away the attention of the world from the massacre that are being committed to what's taking place in Syria right now and their so-called referendum.
OK, well, let's get some international reaction to the referendum now. Regional Arab leaders have been voicing their opinion on the vote in Syria. This is what the Emir of Qatar had to say.
I don't think it's the right time for setting election with this circumstances going around the big towns or cities like Homs, like Elbo, like Dar'a. But of course, far away, I really don't know what's going on. Normally, if the people moved, and the killing didn't stop, normally there would be change. And I believe what happened in Yemen, it's not a bad idea.
Western leaders also not impressed. The German Foreign Minister Guido Westerwelle has said the referendum was a sham.
Yesterday's referendum is a farce. It was a sham vote, which has nothing to do with democracy. Violence continues, and that's why it's right that we in Europe will vote for new, stricter sanctions against the Syrian regime today.
Yaser, if I can come back to you, you were talking about international reaction there. Is there a concern that there will be some quarters, maybe Russia, maybe China, who are using the referendum to give President Assad more time?
Well, of course they're going to do. I mean, that's been their modus operandi from day one. Unfortunately, the Russian president recently revealed his true motives in abetting and allowing the massacres in Syria. He said that Russia will not be a yes man to the United States. That means that the thousands upon thousands of Syrian civilians that are being shelled every single day are held hostage to this Russian pride in not wanting to be a yes man to the United States and the Western agenda. I mean, of course they're going to be using this as as an excuse to prolong, to give more of a chance for Bashar al-Assad and his cohorts and his criminal gang to keep on wiping out neighborhoods and centers of resistance that have been particularly vocal against Bashar al-Assad. I think the international community should wisen up to that fact, and obviously the Russians and the Chinese to be exposed for abetting this criminality as they are.
I know you say that the Constitution is not the central argument here and it's a distraction, but is there anything in the Constitution that may give you some hope for progress?
Well, ma'am, again, let's lay some legal context again. Let's compare this new so-called constitution to the Constitution of 1973, which your guest was talking about earlier. The Constitution of 1973 was actually not so bad, other than this Article 8, which, again, the regime has been using as a distraction that, look, everyone, we finally gave you this huge compromise, which obviously it's about 9 or 10 months late, that we got rid of Article 8. But if you look at other elements of the Syrian Constitution of 1973, you'll see elements that describe the Syrian Arab Republic as a democratic state in Article 1. Article 25 talks about personal freedom and talks about how the state should guard safeguards their personal freedom and their dignity and security. You read things like in Article 38, every citizen has the right to freely and openly express his view in words, writing, and through other means of expression. The state guarantees the freedom of the press, of printing, of publication. Article 39, citizens have the right to meet and demonstrate peacefully within the principles of the Constitution. I mean, you hear these things, you read this old Constitution, and you're thinking to yourself, well, I must be living in Switzerland or something. I mean, the brutality and the oppression and the suppression, the level of inhumanity that has been exercised by Bashar al-Assad and his cohorts to suppress anyone that disagrees with him for the overwhelmingly large first period of this protest, which has been overwhelmingly peaceful, is a true evidence that Bashar al-Assad is not interested in a new constitution, is not interested in any sort of reform. The problem is not the constitution. The problem is the authoritarian culture, it's the dictatorship, it's the choosing the security/military solution rather than the peaceful and political solution by the regime, is pushing the uprising and the opposition and the revolutionaries on the ground to pick up arms and defend themselves from this brutality.
Okay.
That is the problem. It's not the Constitution.
Well, let me get a response to that from George Jabbour. George, the problem is not the Constitution, it's the illegitimacy of the regime. The whole Constitution issue is a distraction.
Well, first, I would like to congratulate your guest because he knows the Syrian Constitution of 1973 rather well. He read parts of articles in the 4th section of the first chapter.
Yeah, and what he's saying is that wasn't a bad constitution. It's not the constitution that needs changing.
Yes, but then there is a fine point which perhaps he did not pay attention to. This fine point is Article 154, which says that the present laws continue to be active till they are amended in order to be reconciled with the Constitution. Now, that article in the 1973 Constitution was a source of trouble for me because I did not like it. I was not a member of the legislature at that time. I was working at the presidential palace. I thought that there should be a time limit for the reconciliation between the current laws and the Constitution. Now, in this new Constitution, there is a time limit, and it is 3 years. What did it mean that we did not have a time limit at that article at that time? The state of emergency was on, and the state of emergency is declared by a law. So the law of the state of emergency would continue to be effective even the Constitution was passed. So Article 154 sort of jeopardized the application.
But George, I'm sorry to interrupt, but the argument here is not about comparing articles of the new Constitution with articles of the old Constitution. The argument is whether the Constitution needs changing at all. It should be the government that is declared illegitimate, and President Assad should be removed from power before any discussions on a new Constitution can take place.
Well, I suppose that the articles of the Constitution were referred to them first, not by me, by your other guest. So I have to be on par with him in this, since he sort of brought the articles of the Constitution.
Well, let me just bring Yaser in, because I know he's trying to put another point to you. Go ahead, Yaser.
Yes, you're not going to be able to get a straight answer from your guest in Damascus. After all, he's in Damascus. There's no way he will be able to criticize in any way, shape, or form this sitting brutal regime. But to just quickly respond to his legalese point, which again is an attempt to distract from the larger context, which is, as we speak, cities are being shelled by the Syrian military. Neighborhoods, civilian neighborhoods are being shelled right now. Thousands of refugees are being let out in the streets right now. People are still stuck in Bab al-Amr. There are tons of civilians that are wounded. We're still trying to get, the Syrian regime actually completely blocked this agreement with the Red Cross to let in extremely important humanitarian aid goods. But just to respond to him, there is, in the new constitution, there's some language that actually is quite, that makes what your guest is saying, points to the irony. And it says, existing laws incompatible with the new constitution remain in effect until they are amended. This, in effect, means that all unconstitutional laws, whether, regardless of this new lofty ideals that are being proposed in this new constitution, even if they were completely unconstitutional, they will be in effect until the legislator, which, by the way, Bashar al-Assad will still preside over and has the right to completely dissolve the legislator per the new constitution, has the right to remain sitting on top of the Supreme Constitutional Court and appoint its judges without any sort of checks or balances by any of the two branches. And so you'll have these laws completely unchallenged until the end of time, until Bashar al-Assad dies.
Let me bring Fadi in, as we're quickly running out of time. Fadi, clearly there's a lot of technical points and legal points in the Constitution. There is nothing here that is going to end the violence in Syria, is there?
Absolutely not. This is a matter of a technical issue that somebody smartly within the regime thought that we can throw this and buy time. At the end of the day, the Syrian society is split and polarized, and there's a large percentage of the population in between, caught in between, who want a solution. And they were promised, if you like, by the state media, by the president, by the government, by the regime, that this is some sort of a solution. And the regime thought that this is something that can it buy time with. And with this, hopefully things will change, circumstances will change, and things will stabilize. Yeah. I don't think this is realistic at all, and this is only going to fuel or entrench, more people will be entrenched within their own views. Some people will be maybe tricked, if you like, for a while to think that this can change. But the fact that a huge power was put in the hand of the president, codified by the new constitution, and as well there's an amnesty for the president, and the inability to change the constitution for 18 months or more. It's one of the articles. All of these indicate that no real change is really happening. And even if there's a parliament tomorrow that is totally free, and even if the opposition accepts that parliament, it cannot change this constitution until the next elections, which is not what everybody is asking for, and will not satisfy a huge majority of the opposition groups or the people who are joining the uprising in Syria.
Gentlemen, I think we've only just scratched the surface of this subject. I wish we had more time, but I'm afraid we don't, so I'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed to my guests, Yaser Tabbara, Fadi Salem, and on the line from Damascus, George Jabbour. And thank you for watching. If you have any comments or you simply want to tell us what stories we should be covering, do email us on insidestory@aljazeera.net. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye for now.